Let me see. I think we're off. Yeah. Oh, so yesterday I got. I saw on Twitter something about Google's Bard, which is their AI, like their Chat GPT, but Google's version is called Bard. And so I had a bit of play with that. That was interesting, asking it some questions, and the way that you will ask it a question, and it might go, "I'm just a machine learning chatbot. I don't have a response for that." And then you sort of phrase the question differently, or you might say, "Well, same question, but preface it with, based upon our earlier conversations, whatever your question was," and it would go, blah, 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 and give you an answer.
So it recognises what you've sort of said already.
It must keep a history of what you've been saying. And you can certainly sort of prompt it for things. Like I was asking about left wing. I was saying to it, do you understand the political term left wing? And it said, yes, I do. And then I said, okay, the data set that you've been trained on, how would you class it as left or right wing? And it said, I'm just a machine learning thing. I can't tell.
Opinionate.
Yeah. And I said, based upon our earlier conversation where you said you understood what left wing meant, how would you classify the data set you've been trained on? And it said, I'd classify the data set as left-leaning because a number of the resources do come from what would be considered left-wing sites. And I was like, it's interesting. Like you can try to draw out of it information.
But you're quite proficient with IT stuff, so you probably know how to phrase it in a way from a computer point.
Nah, man, that's the thing with this, with Bard and GPT. It's like talking to someone. And honestly, it feels like it's got, I don't want to say consciousness, but it feels more than just a computer asking. It's not like just typing into Google, tell me how something works. You get a different level of response, and you can go back and re-question it again and variate from, like I say, based on your last response, what would this mean in this context? Or you can ask the questions like, assuming that you are a football star, how would you feel about this thing? Or assuming you are a doctor, how would you feel about this thing? Like you can get it to sort of take a viewpoint when looking at information. Yeah.
It's scary how advanced it's getting, isn't it? Maybe I'll just show my age.
No, I think it is. It's scary, but I think the reason I think it's scary is because I think there will be a lot of people who will find it difficult to retain their jobs because of AI. Like a lot of things, copywriting, software developers. Like I always thought as a software developer that I'd be fine for a job. No way, man.
Like patent attorneys as well.
Yeah, that stuff's out the door.
Yeah,
like you can already ask it legal questions. You can say, I'm living in this state, and I've got a dispute about the rent being paid by my tenant in a property, and I'd like to know if I'm able to ask them to be evicted, or whatever your question might be. And it'll go, well, based upon this and that, and you can ask it for references and give me references. I saw someone the other day say, they were asking ChatGPT. They said, are there any good sources for crime statistics in the San Francisco area? And it came back and went, yes, there are a number of those. And one of them, and it gave a link, and it was to the San Francisco Police Department public crime reporting stats.
Surely that'd be pretty common sense, though. That's where you would go if you were looking, back in the olden days, that's probably where you would head to find that information.
You probably would, but here you can ask it. Here you can ask it things like, is there some? And it'll give you a link. Then what this guy did was went there, downloaded, I guess it was like an Excel file, and then he uploaded that Excel file into GPT-4 and said, based upon this information I've just uploaded, can you give me some trending analysis and tell me at least 3 interesting trends you see in this data? And so it takes the data, analyzes it, comes back with these charts and graphs showing homicide rates over the last 4 years have increased and blah, 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 blah. Like you would pay a data scientist to go and do for you. It just does.
Does it work out the p-values as well?
I guess so. Like if you asked it to on these, it probably would. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's really good. Like it's code software. Ask it to write some code, writes it. You can break the code, or if your code's not working, you can just paste it in and go, fix this code. And it will just tweak it for you and spit it out so that it works.
Wasn't it? I don't know. There's somebody who actually stopped working for a company because of the advancements in their AI software got so extreme that he went, nah, this is a bit like Terminator. I need to sort of
There's
I can't remember who it was, but somebody sort of.
There was just, I think recently, I think one of the guys from the Google AI team has left. I'm not sure the reasons for him leaving, but I think that he here has some concerns about it progressing at the rate it is.
Yeah, I think that's who I remember just hearing that in the news.
Yeah. The rate of progress is really quite mind-blowing. You know, it's every couple of days something's happening. Like I remember about 3 months ago talking to someone on the show here and saying, look, you know, I was joking and saying, look, in 2 weeks' time, you'll be able to go to Netflix and you'll have the new subscription, the AI subscription, and you'll just say into your remote control microphone, give me a movie. It's a bit like Dune, but it's got aliens coming down, set in the 1800s, and the hero is a girl called Cameron, whatever, and your TV screen will just go tick, 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 and the film will start. And it'll be all AI generated on the spot, just to your requirements, perfect graphics. And so, anyhow, last week, a movie trailer came out for Star Wars, but in Wes Anderson style. It's all in the pinks and yellows and blues of Wes Anderson, but it looks like is a trailer for Star Wars. And there's this week, there's a whole heap you can find out now, which is text to video, where someone's just put in some prompts and then the AI has generated the video. I mean, you give that another 2 weeks and it'll be real good. And on a Friday night at home, you won't go to Netflix and look through action, drama, other people watched. It'll be like, make me this. The kids will make it for you. The kids will come home. I'll go, Dad, watch this movie I've prompted or suggested for you. And they will have said, make a movie for Dad's account. You know, it's a bit like RoboCop, but something else and blah, blah, blah.
But don't you think that, like, I suppose this is one of my bugbears about, you know, like the digital industry now. Like, I miss going to a video shop, or I miss going to like a record shop and flicking through stuff, and like that, having that something that's physical and tangible there, and go, you know, looking around over it. Whereas everything now it's all
on a screen.
Yeah. You know, so there's stuff that kids just won't know. Like our kids will probably never hold a newspaper and sit on a bus or a train and read a newspaper like we used to do in the mornings, and our parents and grandparents would have done all the time. You know, even books. Kids will do a lot more reading on iPads, phones, Kindles, rather than actually holding a book and, you know, getting the smell of a book. But it's a weird thing, because I was talking to my kids and they're like, Dad, you spend so much time on your phone. And I was like, yeah, I do. But then I thought, well, hang on. I read on here. I watch television. I don't watch any television. I watch YouTube, you know, like podcasts and things. I read the news on here. I get the weather on here. So, like, yes, I do spend time on my phone. But if I didn't have my phone, I'd still be spending time doing those things, seeking that information. You know, like I'd be looking up the weather somewhere. I'd be watching TV. I'd be reading the newspaper. But now that, like you say, that's all just condensed down to digital. It's in just one device now. Anyhow, so yesterday I saw on Twitter a link to Google's AI test kitchen, and it has some music AI there. And I signed up for it, and I got the email today. It's like, yep, your turn. You can go and play with it now. And so this morning, me and the kids were just typing in some funky jazz with a cool saxophone and flute, and it goes tick, 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 tick. And it starts playing music, and it's a band playing. It's cool funky jazz, and it's got a saxophone and a flute, and then it plays for about 30 seconds, and then it gives you a second one that's created, and they're actually asking people to help train it. So of the two, you've got to choose which one you thought was a better match for what you asked it for. Yeah, I said bass-driven hard rock with screaming guitars, and it comes out with this like hard rock stuff. And so it's not actual other people's songs. It's generated some grooves itself and then gone, what do you reckon?
Yeah.
Interesting. People want feedback on that, because everyone's got different tastes, and you know,
I think they just kept trying to get some feedback to guide on. We've given you two responses to what you asked for. Which one do you think better aligned?
Oh yeah. So So you've given a description.
Yep.
Does this match a description, or is this a better match of a description?
Yeah.
As opposed to which one you like more, which is more subjective, as opposed to
the other one being more formal.
Yeah, that's it. We typed in. I was typing in scary music, and Locke was looking over my shoulder, going, "Oh, Dad, make it say really." So I said, "Really scary music." He goes, "Really, really, really, really scary music."
Did they buy Baby Shark after that?
Yeah, no, but what it came up with for us was not very scary. It was, but of the two options, you were able to select. One of them had too much rhythm. One of them had just too much like drums going in to be scary. And,
right.
we were going. So then we said haunting music. Haunting got it a lot closer to what you're expecting. There was sort of strings and echoey sounds. There was more of that. So it's definitely still learning, but fun. And I did something like 90s jazz hop or something like that. And the track it came out with, I was like, I could listen to that all day. Like, it was really good.
So you try mixing some genres as well, just to see, sort of, like Welsh orchestral, trip hop, funk.
I haven't yet, but I imagine there's probably right now around the world, there's probably 1 million people using it now because it's a Google thing, training it. And like every hour, it's just getting more accurate in terms of interpreting people's prompts for things. So you'll be able to I think it won't be long. I'm looking forward to that because, I've always imagined some tracks that I'd like to make in my head, but they're big soundscapey things, and I don't have the musical talent or really time to like even pick all the instruments on some software and try and put it together. But if I can say, dark, cloudy evening, moon, a wolf howling, a bass starts in the background, and give it some prompts, and it comes out with something where then, like you can with Bard and GPT, we can go, okay, based on what you've just done, drop out the wolf howling, but give us a little bit more keyboards that is kind of in a spooky sense. And I imagine after you've talked to it a few times, it'll kind of get your feel for what a spooky sense might mean in terms of sound. I reckon you'll just be able to craft these amazing things. It's like video. You'll be able to craft these amazing videos. We'll be like, hey, Matt, we're doing Friday night. Come around and watch this fucking movie I've made. It's insane.
Only took me 2 minutes.
Yeah. But what's the impact of that going to be on the music and television and movie industry? That's going to be huge.
Well, how long will it take us to get there? I mean,
next week.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
No shit. This is what I'm saying.
Looking at your watch.
Yeah.
There's no watcher. It's going to take me 2 arm hairs.
That's how quick it's going to be because it's just developing so rapidly. I'm surprised that there's not already talk of like Netflix or Amazon or whoever, Hulu, saying, yep, our new service, it's only a little while away. We're just still tweaking things. But even if it was just for short films, like, it's only going to be a 5-minute long film. Still, how much fun. This is fun. Playing with this music thing, it was just fun. What's it going to give us? The expectation. That's nothing like it.
How long did it take, like, after you've sort of given your descriptions, how long did it take before it actually...
5 seconds.
Okay, so it wasn't like, we'll be back in 10 minutes with something that we've created.
No, it's super fast. Right. And Bard and GPT-4, they're really quick. You can type it in, or you can just hit your microphone button, you can say it. And again, it takes it 5 seconds to come back with a response. It's really quick. A couple of years ago, I went and bought a bit of electronic stuff because I was thinking, as a hobby, this is something to do to kill time. Before I'd started the podcast, I was like, I might try and build like an assistant, like a better robot. I thought, I'll make a little robot and I'll try and put some smarts into it so you can have a conversation with it, because I thought that would be a cool thing, something that could roll around. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, all I would have to do now is build the robot part, like the actual assistant voice thing. You would just...
stick your iPad in there.
Yeah, you just subscribe to some of these things and use an API and talk to it, and it would just come back and give you music, movies, or whatever. Rewriting text is amazing. You give it some text and say, write this in a more engaging manner, or write this in a as if it was written by a sales manager, and it just comes back, and you're like, that's pretty good. It's got a real awareness of the different genres of writing. So, I don't know how it's going to end up, but I think we're going to get there pretty quickly.
Or you're saying it's taking every 2 weeks. There's going to be improvements. So yeah, it will be quick.
Yeah, because a lot of these AIs, the more they use, the more they learn.
It's adaptive software.
Yeah. So they're getting used more, they're learning more, and then I'm pretty sure that they will be using a different type of AI to redesign the next version of this AI. So you're kind of getting into this positive feedback loop where things are just getting...
It is going to end up like Terminator, isn't it? Where the machines take over the world.
Skynet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a good chance. Well, already, there's a whole heap of... You look at the Ukraine war, all those drones of different types. This is the first war where there's been just so many drones, proliferation. Little ones like DJI Mavics with a hand grenade strapped to the bottom of them to full Bactar, whatever they're called, massive big drones. But I don't know if they're using them already, but it cannot be far off that some of those looking assault tank support things, the BMPs, they're like a tank body, but instead of one big turret, they've got these two cannons on them. They're just lethal. But why would you put any people in them? You just have some dude sitting 100 kilometres away, safely, just looking through the screen and driving it around. That way no one gets killed on the battlefield. It's going to be like you said, Terminator. It's going to be tanks fighting tanks.
Well, if you're not, I suppose, what's the point of, I suppose there is territory that you've got to try and take, isn't there? But, like death and war are inevitably, linked, aren't they? So, unless it's just that ends up like being a big game of mechanical chess, where you're just blowing up each other's machines for, to try and advance your territory.
Maybe
that would be nice. It'd be a lot easier on everyone, wouldn't it?
Maybe that's a weird unintended consequence of what might happen in war, that in 2 years' time, there might be no people being killed in war. It'll just become, like you say, it's just, well, where's the territory gain or loss? Yeah. And, that's gone too far. Oh, fuck, you own all our country. Okay, we give up.
Our machines have got to your border and, but everyone else is tucked up nicely in safe environments.
But again, how does that change things? If you've got a military which normally has thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of people, like the American military must have so many people in it. Now all those frontline people, maybe effectively, you don't have them anymore, or you don't have pilots anymore because it's just drones flying around. All your pilots, I guess, are dudes playing computer games with a joystick, just looking at a camera view, given that extra human touch to what the AI is already managing. Same with your tank commanders, same with your boats and your submarines. It's just machines fighting each other. That's a weird concept.
But like you said, in some ways pleasing because it'd be less human life lost.
Yeah. Did you see so Trump, he's back on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I keep hearing his name pop up again. Bless him.
So I only watched a little bit of it, but I think it was CNN. They put on one of those, like a town hall meeting. They have an audience who can ask questions, and they had Trump and the presenter. And the presenter, it looked like she was trying to get him into a sort of a trap or a position. She was saying, so do you think that Ukraine, are the good guys? And do you think that Russia are the bad guys and should lose this war? And Trump said, I just want all these people to stop dying. I thought it was a really good answer. Like, he didn't fall for the trap. And she said, yes, but do you think Russia's are the bad guys? He said, I think that all these people should stop dying. The Ukrainians and the Russians, we should stop killing all these people. And I thought, couldn't think of a better answer without getting into trouble, And it's exactly that sort of, well, it's not that thing at all. But yeah, here's that same idea of less people being killed in war is a good thing, Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for coming on, and it's very timely given that it's International Nursing Day. Nurses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nurses Day yesterday.
Yeah. Do you know why that was?
No.
So it's Florence Nightingale's birthday.
Oh, is it?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Florence Nightingale was a nurse in World War I?
Yeah, in the Crimea.
Oh, relevant around that area again. Yes, and so with that, kind of leads into you coming onto the show. What is your title?
my title. So the official title is Nurse Specialist Pediatric Surgery Trauma Portfolio, which is a bit of a mouthful. Even I can't say that. My role essentially is to coordinate and act as and be a resource for all trauma patients that come in, all pediatric trauma patients that come into my hospital. When you would go to hospital, you would have one thing wrong with you, and you were admitted under the team that specialises in that one thing, and that you go to the ward that knows all about that one thing. For example, cardiology, sort of oncology, so cancers and such forth. But trauma doesn't quite work like that. So you can have broken bones, you can have brain damage, you can have internal organ damage. So which ward do you go to? Do you go to the neurosurgery ward? Do you go to the orthopedic ward? Do you go to the general surgery ward? And so, a lot of these illnesses as well have different ways of managing them, so you have to sort of balance it up. So I basically act as a sort of conduit between all of these different specialties, and make sure the right people are involved at the right time, and make sure that people progress through the system. It's so essentially I'm like a case manager, and this sort of model of care has been shown to reduce complications, reduce length of stay, and just help. It stops patients sort of getting festering because people are going, oh, I thought you were doing that, and oh no, oh, we haven't done this. Oh, that's right, that team's doing that sort of thing. So I'm constantly driving it. So that was my job title, what I've just given you. But I think more of a global term, and the term used in Australia as well, is like a trauma nurse specialist or a trauma coordinator. So.
Coordinator, that's sort of what it sounds like. So you make sure when people come in that instead of just sitting there and bleeding to death while people scratch their heads as to who should look at them, you kind of got it figured out in terms of, okay, I'll get this person in. I know that you've got bone damage, you've got some internal stuff, which is probably more life-threatening than maybe the bone damage. So we're going to prioritise this team to come in and help you and see you first. Or...
Yeah, well, normally, so, you come in from, let's say a serious car crash, the ambulance crew will bring you into hospital. They will contact the hospital ahead of time, and usually, like, the hospital will put out something like a trauma call, which is what you see on TV. Trauma and resuscitate for stat, and that is a good multidisciplinary team with the appropriate skill mix to manage the patient initially, and to prevent them any serious complications happening straight away. And then as ailments become apparent, then more people would become involved, and so I'll sort of make sure they are becoming involved. So, if somebody's got, we do some x-rays as part of our primary survey, and you can see a fracture, then I will, normally the emergency department team would sort that out. But if not, I'll contact them. I'll let them know about this patient. When they come down, they might, do something to the patient, like put a plaster on, like a cast on, or decide to operate, and then it's my job to just remind them a bit, let down the track. Oh, you need to, do we need to sort out an outpatient's appointment for this kid because they're going home after you fix them several days down the track, but the other team's been monitoring them.
So are you sort of like an interface between the medical care team, or whatever that term is, and the administration of the patient? So that, you're making sure the people actually working on them are there, but then also once they've taken their hands off and taken their gloves off, the patient goes wherever they need to do, and forms are filled out so that they're in the right areas. And
make sure the right allied health professionals are involved. So physios, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, social workers. Make sure all of their injuries are lodged as part of their ACC claim as well. Helping them with any insurance stuff that they might need. There's lots that goes on with trauma. People often think of when I say I'm a trauma coordinator, a trauma nurse, they're like, oh, that sounds so glamorous.
I reckon it sounds scary, trauma nurse.
Yeah, but there's a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of data as well. So we maintain a registry of trauma data as well, which is really good for research. And so that's a sort of a lot of what I do. I work with injury prevention as well, because my ideal day at work is not doing anything because no one's in. And so the best way to do that is to prevent people from getting injured. And injury prevention is the best way to do that.
And kids do hurt themselves all the time for various reasons, I suppose. Is it busy where you work? Like, are there always kids coming in, or do you have like a certain level of trauma that only those kids would come to you? How does that?
Yeah, so the hospital's always busy.
Yeah.
In the winter, you get respiratory illnesses, flus and bronchiolitis and things like that. Trauma's busier in the summer. It's warmer months. People are outside. They're playing. We've got summer holidays. People are traveling around the country. They're more likely to go to the beach. Be outside on, motocross bikes or whatever. So invariably, trauma is more of a summer disease. It's not just here in New Zealand. It's something that I've experienced everywhere else I've worked as well. And you can sort of, just I suppose with some of the more, when I say minor traumas, just like what we call isolated simple injuries, so broken arms. So if it's a nice day like today, especially after the weather we've had where everyone's been stuck inside, you can sort of anticipate that there'll be some playground related injuries that come in.
Yeah.
Whereas and that'll be sort of school age kids, like middle school age kids. So I suppose 6, 7 up until like 12 or so. When the weather's rubbish, probably the thing I see the most is fingers shutting doors, and that's toddlers.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of prediction of patterns that you can do, and as the summer months are approaching, the injury prevention bodies will do water safety campaigns. They'll do driveway related injury prevention campaigns and stuff that we would anticipate seeing. I mean,
and older age groups, like maybe because it's motorbikes, so it's kids who are 15 to 17 start doing that as opposed to little kids. So summertime you see older ages coming in maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the older kids, they're more of a risk takers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can still remember being an adolescent. I'm sure you can as well, Tim, and you do take risks then.
You do dumb shit.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, you do dumb shit. But like when you're in that situation, you consider yourself to be invincible, don't you? I think there's that sort of phrase that says, youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
If only I could do all the things I could do then, but with the knowledge and experience that I've got now,
Well, someone else I was talking to about this a while ago. There's a thrill with risk.
Totally. It's pleasurable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like when you talk about adrenaline junkies, it's because there is that little kick you get.
Yeah.
And you need risk. Risk is an important part of your sort of psychological development.
Yeah.
So, I think there's sort of needless risk and then there's acceptable risk. So acceptable risk is somebody who might get injured on who goes on a motocross bike or something like that. And they do it every weekend, and they know that it's a type of hobby that they're going to injure themselves. Yeah. But they're doing something fun, that's pleasurable, and then you get this sort of like unnecessary risk where you get people that don't restrain their children properly in vehicles, or people that drink and then sort of drive. I don't want to be sort of too judgmental because there might be other reasons behind this, but you sort of you sit there and go, well, that's risk that you don't need to take.
You've probably, if a bit of thought, you could have prevented that whole thing happening. I
mean, every injury is preventable. But then we'd be sat inside
in cotton wool doing nothing with our lives.
But there is risk in everything we do. Sort of, you walk outside, you go to cross the road, there's a degree of risk in that, but you sort of, the risk of getting injured is minimal if you know the right things to do. And, even sat in a building, there's a risk that the building could collapse. I mean, I don't want to turn everyone into sort of paranoid sort of people that they can't do anything, but there's everything has risk in it. It's whether it's sort of like high risk, low risk, and, whether it's acceptable or needless risk.
How do you find managing that as a parent? Because, you've got kids the same age as mine.
I am the most boring parent on the planet. And this job has made me the most boring person on the planet, Tim.
No skydiving weekends for you.
No, totally. No, I see weird stuff. I see extraordinary stuff, but I see it on a daily basis. So what might be something like a once in a million chance of occurring to someone, I see it, those sorts of things
twice
regularly.
a week.
Yeah. And I think back to when I was a kid and the things I used to do. I grew up on a farm, we used to make these little tunnels through the hay bales, and we're talking like they'd be like 10, 15 meters high, and those, I can't know how much, one of those rectangular hay bales weighs. But, you've got a good number of those above you. And, one of those, it's like playing Jenga, like life-size Jenga. And, it just takes one of those to fall down. And then, and I'd be going through it on my own. So that collapses down on me. And I'm in a barn, miles away from the house. Nobody's going to find me for ages, And you think, like, back in the olden days, like when we were younger, like, we didn't have to use seatbelts in cars,
Yeah.
I can remember just turning around, being sat in the back. At least I was sat in the back, and pretending that the parcel shelf was the console of the Millennium Falcon, and I was flying. And I'd be flying backwards. Yeah, but so I'd be, I wouldn't be restrained. I'd be facing the wrong way, But that was okay. That's what we did back in those days, wasn't it? But as we learn, as things become more apparent and there's ways of preventing injury, then these sorts of things get put to the side, and vehicles become safer, and things like seatbelts are required, and and the appropriate car restraints are required for children. So it'd be interesting to see what it's going to be like in another sort of 30 or 40 years time as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, with cars, some people are like, seatbelts shouldn't have them. With me, I'm like, well, you shouldn't have seatbelts for sitting on a chair in your home. But when you're in a piece of metal going 100 kilometers an hour, and there's other pieces of metal coming 100 kilometers an hour at you the other direction, and the only thing that's separating you is a couple of strips of white paint on the road, like, maybe some sort of safety is a good idea here,
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
Like being in a car is like driving a car is like having a loaded weapon.
Yeah.
Like the damage you can cause with a car.
Oh, yeah.
So
as I've got older, I get more of that fear when I'm just driving around, like driving between here and Silverdale and things like that on those roads. There's a couple of corners there where you come around, and if a truck is coming the other way and they overcook it a little bit, they've got nowhere to go. They're going to come across the centre line, and every time I approach those corners, I'm just like, okay, I'm ready. I'm wary of this. Particularly too because precious cargo on board. You got the family on, a couple of kids in the car. It makes you think about those things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember the first. I don't know what it was like for you, Tim, but when I first brought my children home from the hospital, like I could probably walked faster than I drove. Yeah, I was going like. I just don't go past me. It's just So no, totally get it. And I think also with my job, it's since I had kids as well, it's made it. It certainly has made it harder to start off with, especially when you get kids that come in at a similar age to your kids, and you can picture, But it's certainly become a bit harder since I've had kids.
I would actually say you're really well balanced, considering. Like, I think that if I had your role, I'd be far more restrictive than you are in terms of what the kids can do. Like, I think you've got a good balance, given the fact that, like you say, things that I think's a 1 in a million chance of that screwdriver ending up through their ear, you're like, shit, we had one of those last week and one a month before that, that kind of thing. I think you've got doing a good job.
Well, thanks, mate.
Yeah.
What are you trying to say? I was a bit loose as a parent there.
No. No, you're not loose as a parent, but you're if I was to suggest someone, who do you think would be like the most uptight parent and not let their kids do anything? You'd go, well, someone who would have daily experience of what goes wrong if they do anything. But you're not like that, which is good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, another thing with the kids, you want them to live their life, and one of the best ways to learn is through your own mistakes. Not that but there's mistakes that are significant.
You've got to find a balance, don't you, between
totally.
caring for them, giving them your knowledge and awareness, which you've learnt and grown, and experienced, and they haven't got yet. Sheltering them with the guardrails, but then letting them bounce around like a pinball inside to do those little bits of learning. So hopefully when you take the guardrails away, they're like, yeah, I can kind of see that would be a bad thing to do, Dad. Yeah, it's good, man. Yeah.
It was like the classic is, the kids rocking on the back of their chairs and you go, don't do that, you'll fall over. Right? And then it happens and then you go, there you go, told you so. Guess what? They don't do it after that, because they've learned.
Well, my kids keep doing it.
Oops. Oh, dear.
Yeah. How many people are there? How many people are in Starship in the kid? Well, the whole Starship Hospital is all kids, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, primarily. I mean, so the age cutoff is up to your 15th birthday, but there are some kids that are there for a bit longer with chronic conditions, so they might take a little bit longer to transition to the adult services, or with some of the cancers, they might come in when they're a kid and it's just easier to finish for the sort of treatment now. But generally it's around about your 15th birthday is the cutoff. In other countries it's a bit older than that. I personally feel like it should be a bit older than that in New Zealand as well, because when you're over 15 you can still be at school, and sometimes you get those kids in school. Somebody has a bus crash, and there's kids in school uniforms, and some of them go to kids hospital, they should go to the adult hospital, and vice versa. It's a tricky one because when you're a teenager, especially sort of 14, 15-year-old, you're probably doing the same sort of risk-taking behaviors as a 16 and 17-year-old. So what's what's the right cutoff? Because they might have an adult's physiology and all intents and purposes look like an adult, but mentally they might still be going to bed with a soft toy and stuck their thumb at night. And so they're a really sort of tricky group, the adolescents. Yeah.
Is that the reason for separating the kids, like having Starship Hospital instead of just having a hospital and everyone goes to the hospital? I mean, what is sort of the thinking or the logic behind that?
Yeah, I mean, children are. There's a common phrase that's used, that children are small adults, but they're not. Their physiology is different. Socially, they're a lot different as well. They require, parents, they require the ability to play and to express themselves in other ways. There's a completely different way of communicating with kids as there is with adults. Generally kids don't have the same sort of comorbidities that adults have as well. And they need an environment where they can be a child first and foremost. And doing that on a sort of, grey, boring adult ward and, having an 80-year-old next to an 8-year-old is not appropriate.
That makes sense.
On many reasons. But it's just knowing where that sort of cutoff is. The population's getting older. So there could be an argument for a third group. So we've got obviously pediatrics and then adults, but you could have a sort of a young person's type specialty, which is sort of essentially 10 to 12-year-olds, for example, up until 20-year-olds or something like that, and just sort of have them. It could be broken down again even further, especially like I said, as the adult population get older and older and people are living for longer.
Do the people that who provide the medical care to the kids, are they all Starship people? Do they only work with kids, or will they go to other hospitals and do adults as well? Or
I mean, there's some specialties that would be mixed. I suppose pediatricians only work with children, as you can imagine. But so just in relation to the fields that I work most closely with, neurosurgeons. Work at Starship, also work, other sort of neurosurgical centres. Same with some of the orthopaedic doctors as well. They would do like 1 or 2 days at Starship, and then might do another hospital or have their private rooms. They'll might specialise in sports related injuries or hip replacements and other things like that. So they generally have their professional fingers in lots of different pies. Most of the other sort of staff there, the nursing staff and the allied health professionals, would just be based there. It's not like we would go off and do different things. The way I've been trained in the UK is that you specialise before you finish your qualification in sort of what it used to be one of 4 nursing specialties. So adult nursing, paediatric nursing, mental health, or learning difficulties was the term. So but you do sort of like 2 years of degree just as a group, like a whole group, and then in the midway point you'd specialise off. So it's different here, whereas the training's a lot more broad and generic, the same as in Australia as well. So there's pros and cons to that. I've got some restrictions on my license, so I can only work in a paediatric environment, whereas Kiwis and Aussies won't necessarily have that. But then I feel like I've probably got when I came into nursing, I had a better grounding about child development, child milestones, how to communicate with family members as well. I had a bit more knowledge about child physiology and how it's affected by disease and injury and illness. So yeah, it works sort of both ways really.
You were saying before, like you collect data and that there. What sort of stuff? What sort of data do you collect, and what do you try to do with it?
Yeah, so the data is essentially de-identified data that we use, to look at injuries and mechanisms of injury. So if we want, and things like length of stay, so if we wanted to look at how many sort of pancreas injuries we had over a 5-year period, we could pull the data and go, okay, what was the cause of the injury? And go, okay, well, of those 90 patients, 30 were in car crashes, 10 were sort of motorbike related and such forth. And so we can use it to, for research purposes, and, to help with injury prevention, even help fine tune our performance as a hospital as well. So we can look at length of stay and see how we can do things to improve length of stay. Yeah.
Do you do work with just like the in my industry, you'd call it like the user experience, but like the experience of the kids, if they've got to come in and go to an MRI machine, which is a fucking big, scary, noisy machine, do they work on making that, let's say at Starship, a more fun experience than if you were just to go to a normal MRI machine at a normal hospital,
Yeah, so I mean, the data I collect wouldn't necessarily help with that, but we do collect a lot of stuff about consumer experience, and any good quality project that is done by the hospital will have a consumer representative there as well. We're fortunate; we have play therapists in hospital as well who are unbelievably fantastic at just making things like an MRI scan as normal as possible, because they do a lot of preparatory play with regards to that. They've got books, they've got models, and so they can talk through it. And so these children are prepared before they go in for these things as well. So, the importance, that's another really important component of a good pediatric hospital, is having really good play therapists as well.
Yeah, right. I wasn't aware of that as a role.
Yeah.
So they dress up as like costumes and things, and do you have fun on the ward with kids? Like, kids must be stuck there for a while sometimes.
I right laugh with kids on yeah, totally. That's half the fun of the job. I get to muck around and play games with kids and do stupid things, and that's my job. Right? How's that not cool?
It's cool.
So yeah, I get to play PlayStation with them as well, and like build Lego. Like, whenever I got the time, I think when I had more time with this when I was like a student nurse. But as you sort of like with anything, as you get more senior, you come away from the point that initially brought you into that role. But I still, still do things like that as best as I can, and still have a laugh with my kids.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. My mum worked as a coroner's assistant in my hometown for years, 30 years. So working for the coroner, she wouldn't attend a scene of a crime. The coroner would go, but she was his assistant. So she saw all the photographs. She would help him and provide a softer touch sometimes when talking to the family of the bereaved and all that sort of thing. Anyhow, I don't think it was Mum's retirement. I think it was her, the coroner, Cole's retirement. Anyhow, one or the other. And we're all around at our place having a barbecue. And I said to them, I said, Mum, I said, did you guys ever get any like counselling or, you know, sort of care with dealing with all of these things that you saw? They sort of looked at each other and laughed. It's like, no, that wasn't done then. But like, I wonder, like, do you guys get counselling? Like, you must, you know, obviously, not every kid's going to make it out of Starship alive. Yeah, how do you cope with that? Do they help you cope with that?
Very much so. I mean, there is sort of counselling as you sort of describe it that's available. But for example, with you know, if we have a big trauma come into our emergency department and we manage them, and you know that event is finalised, we do something called an ACE review, which is after critical event review. So it's essentially a hot debrief. Mm-hmm. And we basically get everyone in who was involved very quickly on, as well as we can permit it. I mean, things with emergency departments is they're not limited by the, you know, like wards have like 18 beds, so they don't know they've got 18 patients. Yeah. ED is very much at the you know, whatever's coming in is coming in, and so it can be very busy. And you know, also pre-hospital providers like St. John, they might not be able to attend because they've got loads of other things to do. But we do try to get everyone together to talk through the events, and you know, we'll go over the medical facts as best we know, and then we talk about how we manage them, and that is a really, really useful tool to do. Yeah. We also do what we call cold debrief, and that's not when you necessarily go to the pub and have a few, you know, cold ones, but it might be another form of debrief as a group a bit later on down the track when everyone can get there. Yeah. You know, and that's a little bit more organized.
I guess, does that help you cope with a traumatic situation because you're able to kind of reassure yourself that you've done what you could? Like, you talk about, this is what we knew, this is the steps we took, that's what we were meant to do, that was our process. Maybe the outcome wasn't what we wanted, but, you know, because I imagine, like, oh, say it, like, how fucking hard must it be if a kid comes in and dies?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And the day it stops being horrible, and the day I don't get even a little bit upset by something like that, I've got to give up the job, mate, because, you know, you can't work in a caring industry if you don't care.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I've got some, you know, I say good memories, but I've got some very strong memories of situations that have not gone right, and you know, other members have been in tears. Sometimes there's been patients that I've shed tears over as well. You know, as a group, we're all pretty good at looking after each other as well. When we've been in that situation, when you see someone's upset, you know, you sort of you look after them. If they need to go off, you know, and you cover their patients while they go off for a bit, then so be it. You know, having good support networks outside of work is good as well. My wife's fantastic with stuff like that. It helps that she's not medical, because our conversations aren't driven by
just your work.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of people that work in nursing and medicine that you know, live together, and I'm sure there's there's lots of benefits of having somebody that might understand some of the terminology you use, but then it's quite nice, I find, to be able to sound off to my wife, and she'll listen, and it's fantastic. You know, but then it stops, and it's great because I've done, and I feel good that it's out, and then we just get on with other stuff, you know. So, no, you need to have multiple different ways of coping with the stress of the job. You can't rely on one.
Are your team, like, have you been together for a while? Have you? Or do you have a high turnover because of the stress of the job?
So there's certain areas that have high turnovers. When you say my team, it's so the trauma team, for example, will change from day to day.
Yeah.
You know, people in the more senior roles, there's less turnover there, whereas the more junior members of staff, it's probably the same for lots of professions. You know, the juniors that come in and they rotate round. Yeah. There's only so far you can progress before they
need to move out somewhere.
Yeah, and go do something somewhere else. But you know, we're all sort of good at looking after each other. We do lots of simulation as well, so we make sure because of the fact that the team varies so much that you know, that you go into a trauma resus and you're in there with another 5-6 people, but everyone knows what their roles are.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. So we do lots of practice and training for that.
So do you have like team descriptions, like a basketball team? You know, they have their plays. Like, this is the sort of thing that's happening. So this is our play. You'll be doing that. I'll be doing this.
Very
then
much
after,
so.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, so just as a stand, so we'll have like an airway doctor and an airway nurse, and they're the ones that are responsible for, you know, maintaining and optimizing the patient's airway. There's obviously a team leader, both nursing and medical. We have sort of like a procedural team, so they're the ones that put drips in or drains, and then another team that might be drawing up drugs as well. But the teams have to be quite fluidic. You know, if there's, like, for example, if there's lots and lots and lots of different drugs that are needed, but the patient's airway is fine and they don't need a breathing tube and to be put on a ventilator, you know, you need to be able to swap out and, you know, go, okay, well, this person needs help, rather than going, I'm doing my role, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, people can get tired as well if we're having to do cardiopulmonary resuscitation, so CPR and chest compressions. That's very tiring. And even though you've got the adrenaline kicking in, and you feel like you're doing a great job, we try to rotate people every couple of minutes just to make sure that the quality is still good. And it's, you know, it's, as a team player, you have to sit there and go, yep, that's what we do. That's what we're going to do. I'm not going to be a hero here. And I think that's one of the things I like about my role. Everyone thinks, you know, when you're doing trauma and it's all glamorous and stuff, you know, it's sort of like hero nursing and medicine, but it's not. The thing I love most about it is the teamwork and just being part of a team, and as a collective doing good as a collective, you know.
So how many people, say someone comes in, they've been in a car accident, how many people are working on them?
Again, it would depend on how sick they are.
Yeah.
But as a standard, you would probably you'd have 3 or 4 doctors and 3 or 4 nurses. So you would have airway nurse, you would have like a circulation nurse, maybe a procedures nurse, and then a scribing nurse who's a team leader, and doctors would be in similar situations as well.
So okay, so 8 people, maybe 10, 9 or 10 people.
You know, it can get a lot more than that as well, because, you know, then you have people coming in like radiographers, so they're the ones who are doing the x-rays.
Yep.
You might have a social worker that comes in to be with the family as well. We're a teaching hospital. You don't just wake up with all this knowledge. So there needs to be, you know, if it's appropriate to have students, medical students, nursing students,
observing.
Yeah. And also there's other family members. We don't shut the doors and kick people out.
Yeah.
It's very important that that people are there.
Yeah.
You know, so it can get very busy. Very busy indeed.
So then, so I'm just trying to imagine scenarios. Like something happens, there's, I don't know, like a White Island event, and 4 kids come in, or it's a bus crash or something, and 4 kids come in. How many people are generally there during the day? How many people would you have to call in if you got 4 people come at once?
Well, I mean, generally you'd be able to mobilize a lot of staff from different areas. So if you put out like a trauma call, the hospital manager, like nursing manager, might be able to go, okay, I can get you some nurses from here, and here. You know, I have been called back as well. Fortunately, I wasn't too far away. I finished like a late shift. I was just driving home. I got a phone call, and it's, you know, a similar situation. The emergency. This is when I was working in emergency. The department was already packed. You know, with long waits and lots of sick children around. And then there was multiple presentations from the one incident. Said, Mac, how far away are you? And I was like, oh, you know, 5-minute drive. He said, we've just had this. Can you come back? It's like, yeah, of course. You know, it's sort of. So yeah, it does happen, and we run disaster exercises as well, which are like tabletop exercises, and they're a real challenge because your way of thinking, if there's a mass disaster, has to change. It becomes, I suppose, in some ways quite military-like, whereas you're doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people,
making the triage decisions and things
going,
like that.
This person is an extremist, we're not going to be able to save them. We can spend our time on these other two people who are quite sick and make them better. And it's only a tabletop exercise, and I'm fortunate enough I've never had to do that in real life. But even that is it's hard to flick out. You know, when you want to make everyone better or do your best for everyone.
You got to find some way to, in the moment at least, take the emotion out and just make the best overall choice. Yeah.
I know people that were involved in the mosque shootings in Christchurch and also in the White Island disaster as well. And, you know, they've been trained to do the same sort of thing. But, you know, when it's actually in place, it's a different kettle of fish.
Oh, it must be.
Yeah.
You'd question yourself for the rest of your life, I imagine.
Yeah, totally. I know there's a lot of really good clinicians that don't practice anymore because that was it for them, you know, which is sad, but again, it's understandable. We're all human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know.
So when someone comes in then, and they've suffered a really bad car crash or something, is the first thing just a stabilization phase? Like, do you like say that you can look and fuck, they're going to have to have a lot of surgery to get better, but are you basically trying to get them to a point where they can lay in bed and be sustained for a while? Is that what you're aiming for?
Yeah, so the initial thing, you do something called a primary survey, and that's identifying anything that's going to kill the patient within the next 5 minutes. All right, and it's a relatively quick sort of process, and then you move on to something called a secondary survey, and that's when you're looking for a few more other things. That's when like some of the diagnostic imaging might get done, and primarily the patient should be packaged up and have everything ready by that point. But yeah, you are, that's. Airway, breathing, circulation is your sort of order of events, ABC. Like you need to open the airway, have a patent airway, because if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to get the breathing sorted and the ventilation and the oxygenation for the tissues to fix themselves. And then if blood's not going around, that ventilation and oxygenation is not going to happen. So those are sort of like, that's the initial pathway that we do. And, there's lots of courses that teach that, like a structured approach, like I've just said, with the ABC and the other letters that follow as well. So, you don't just go, what am I going to do? Oh, that looks like it's sore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I thought of something, it's just gone out of my head, but while I think of it, have you seen the CPR dogs?
No.
No, this is a true thing.
Right.
A video I was watching the other day of a guy with a German Shepherd or Malinois, or whatever they're called, the ones that jump, amazing jumpers. Those.
They're doing a cardiac compression.
Yeah. Oh. So he was he had the dog, was relatively young, training it, getting it to stand its front legs on something, and then he was at the stage where the guy's laying on the ground with a chest protector on, and this big full-grown sort of German Shepherd type of thing is bouncing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with its front legs on his chest, and then going down and breathing, like putting its snout over his mouth and nose, exhaling, jumping back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd never seen it in my life. It was amazing. But yeah, trained as a cardiac resuscitation dog or whatever you go, CPR dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's true.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see how effective the expired respirations are, because
I think you got to press pretty hard. I don't know.
Oh, you have to press really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's knackering. But yeah, you're like trying to get a seal around someone's mouth.
Well, they've got those big dog lips. I think it was just...
Yeah.
But that was that. I mean, the compression, watching that, I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. But yeah, I can kind of imagine you could train a dog to do that. But then it was doing like 5 compressions, then going down, breathing on the person's face. Well, I presume it was breathing. I don't know what else it would have been doing, but trying to push some air in.
Because a lot of pre-hospital CPR now is driven towards just the cardiac compressions only.
Yeah.
For several reasons. People are very reluctant to put their mouths over someone else's mouths, especially if you think of, the pandemic we've just gone through. Yeah. And he says vomit there as well. And when you're compressing the chest, invariably you're causing lung
movement
as well. So it's the compressions that most people untrained in a pre-hospital environment would be doing.
Yeah.
But fair play to the dog for giving it.
Yeah, look, I don't know if it was something that the guy had just done as a gimmick, or if it's an actual thing they are able to achieve and it's useful to have a CPR dog. But that dog was doing CPR. Definitely knew what it was doing. Yeah.
I might train my dog to do it.
Yeah, you could get Frankie to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it with CPR? What is it like every second? That's hard.
So the compressions bit, it's essentially the beat rate is 100 beats per minute, around about. So there's a couple of songs.
Slower, sort of your slower techno speed.
Well, so the songs that you're supposed to have going through your head are, for the optimists out there, it says "Staying Alive." For the pessimists, is Another One Bites the Dust. So that's I think one's slightly faster than the other, but invariably those are the sort of like songs that
depends on if you like the patient or not.
Yeah.
Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah, and you've got to go. You've got to go a good sort of like, good depth on the chest wall as well.
Yeah, I've heard that like you might end up with some sore sternum or cracked ribs or something after if it's done properly to get the heart to actually pump. Otherwise, you're not going hard enough.
Yeah.
But what about for a little kid, like a toddler, 2 or 3 years old? What are you doing? 2 fingers and just...
Yep, 2 fingers. Or, if it's a baby, you can put your arms around the chest and, hold like so the rib cage is in right there and just down that way as well.
Yeah.
Have a bit better control that way as well. But that's easier to do if there's 2 people doing it. So...
What about kids our age, like 8, 9, 10?
Kids our age.
Yeah, sorry, our kids' age.
That's called grown-ups.
Yeah.
No, so you could probably just use the heel of one hand. You wouldn't necessarily have to do those sort of the 2. Yeah.
Yeah. What, 2 questions, I guess. Yeah, what's the most common thing the kids come into the hospital for? Broken arms?
From a trauma point of view, broken arms. The sort of elbow.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Falling off swings.
Monkey bars.
Monkey bars.
So, that's... And I think it's because people are climbing over the top of, on the top of them. Because when you're swinging from a monkey bar,
you'd usually land feet first.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Or you'd land on your shoulder or on your back, if you slip. But people like one of our reactions is if you fall, is you put your arm out like that.
Yeah.
And so the force goes up into the if the arm's flexed, it goes into the goes into the elbow and causes a fracture. But I suppose that would be. So broken arms are probably the most common. I said like fingers shutting doors is another one. So, but going back to the broken arms, monkey bars, trampolines.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So falling off bikes, skateboards. Yeah.
It's easy to do. Like I know, like Willa has broken her arm twice. I can't remember how she did it the second time, but the first time. Oh, no, that's right. I remember. The first time, they were just in the hallway and they'd taken Locke's mattress off his bed and had turned it on its side and had stuck it across the hallway. Like it was a wall, a new wall between their 2 bedroom doors. And they were just climbing across the mattress and she fell off the mattress, like a fall of this far, and broke her arm.
Yeah.
And then the other time, in a doorway, you can climb like Spider-Man. You put your hands in your feet and you can climb up in the doorway. And her friend walked underneath and she looked down and either she bumped her foot or she lost the balance and then broke her arm again.
Is it the same arm?
I think it was the same arm. The first time, though, it was, I don't know what the term is, it was just a fracture. Looking at the x-ray, you couldn't even tell it was broken, but it had fractured.
Buckle? Is it a buckle fracture?
Oh, I don't think it was buckle, but it was broken. She got a cast, but it didn't look like it. The second one, like
you could see it.
Her arm was here, her wrist and hand was here. Like it was both bones had just let go completely the second time. Yeah,
that's always awful to see.
Fuck yeah. That was. I think that one was right at the start of lockdown. I think it was. And we had some people over for a barbecue or something. And it's just like, oh my God.
That would have been fun going to the hospital during lockdown.
Renee took I dressed them up in suits. I was like, because this is right back at the start, like we're like, we don't know how bad this is, Had it happened now, I'd been like, just go to hospital. But then I was like, look, you need to put on shower caps, you need to put on masks, goggles. Plastic booties. This could be a virus. It's probably at the hospital. Don't get sick.
It's funny because when during all our lockdowns, I was there's less trauma coming in, so I ended up doing some extra work. Getting deployed down to the emergency department, so sort of front line. I actually felt safer in emergency than I did going to the supermarket. I think because I've got all the right gear there as well. I've got the ability to test people, strangers, whereas in the supermarkets, you have no idea who's possibly positive and is still walking around touching everything as well.
So when you say you go down to the emergency ward, what was that? Is that not part of Starship? Is that just general hospital emergency ward?
No, the emergency department at Starship.
Oh, right. So what's the difference between emergency and trauma then?
Okay, so the emergency department is where you go.
If you've got really bad stomach pains, you'd go to the emergency.
It's front line for the hospital. It's the front door.
Right.
So trauma goes there.
Yeah.
Medical, ailments like diseases go there. That's where you would go with coughs and colds and stuff, rashes. Yeah. That's where you go. So trauma is everything, everything injury, so you get admitted with trauma. So you'll come into the emergency department with trauma, you'll get packaged up, and then you'll get sent to the intensive care unit or the ward or hopefully home. But that's trauma. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. What's it like in terms of, let's just like workload? Would you recommend the job to someone else to go and to do it?
Yeah. Look, I love my job. I'm not going to go into too much stuff about pay or anything like that. It's, there's other jobs which are better paying out there, but I suppose it depends what your priority is in life. I went into it. I was good at science. I like working with kids. Going back to our conversation before about all the AI stuff, will never be replaced. Not in our lifetime anyway, as far as I'm concerned. I really enjoy nursing. It's so rewarding. It really is. Seeing like, it's not nice seeing kids come in, but to see them go home after them being in such a bad way and knowing that you've contributed. It's amazing.
Yeah, like when you were telling that story about how you had finished a long shift and then you got a call, can you come back? And you're like, yeah, sure. Like I can imagine that your work is one of those jobs where you do feel like you get something out of the work. It's not like, I don't know, just working in an office doing something to get an income. With your job, it's like, well, there's some real fucking excitement here. Like things are on the line, and if we do our job well, we've really helped someone, which is one of those things I know that if you are helping someone else, that actually gives you purpose and a sort of a sense of meaning. So if you're doing that in your job, that's a good thing.
Yeah, there are some people that like the excitement, and I sort of get that as well. It's it's very much a adrenaline form of nursing, trauma nursing and emergency nursing. And I probably was a little bit like that, when I was younger. But now I think that the first thought that goes through my head is there's someone on the end of this.
Yeah, of course.
I've got a sticker on the back of my work phone. It says, I love trauma. It's not like I want you to get hurt. I just want to be there when you are.
Yeah.
In a way of going, I just want to help you through this. So yeah, I think when you get called back, it's not like great, but when you work in that sort of unpredictable environment, it's part of a.
But it feels like the sort of thing that if you got called back, your immediate response would be, I'm coming back to help.
Yeah.
Whereas some lines of work, you get called back because the client's done something stupid and you've got to spend heaps of time working on a spreadsheet again. You'd be like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah, no, totally. And also, the people that are calling you back are your colleagues. They're the people that you have these really sort of like high emotional moments with anyway, and you know what it's like when you're in that situation and you want to be able to help them as well. So it's not just helping the patients and their families, it's helping your colleagues and to be able to go, this is going to be bad. Let's work together to get through this,
Is there a private sector for nursing? Like, are there private hospitals?
Oh yeah, very much so. But they're, I mean, there's not many pediatric ones, and usually the private healthcare setting is more, and the hospitals are more based for like elective procedures or semi-urgent procedures.
Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have a private emergency department in a private hospital sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
You know,
yeah, gotcha.
And I think that's another thing I quite like about working in the public sector as well. It's, you know, it's not about how, you know, sort of how big your, you know, your bank balance is, or how comprehensive your health insurance is. You know, you're injured, you're sick, we will do what we can regardless of who you are or, you know, what income stream you're on to get you better.
Oh, yeah. You know? No, I wasn't coming from that angle. I was actually coming from the other way, whereas, like, I think nursing and being able to provide care to people is undervalued. And, you know, like teaching. I think one of the most important things that you can invest in is like the education of your children, whether they're yours or just the children of the country in general, so that hopefully by the time they grow up, they're well educated, they're capable of doing things and making good decisions. Same with healthcare. Like, you know, you want the best healthcare you can get for people. And that's why I was wondering about the private sector, because I just feel like this is an outsider, but I hear all the time that nurses are leaving. They're not paid enough. They're working all these long hours and things like that. Yeah, that's something that I think ideally would be addressed somehow, because that's an area you want people to be staying and not leaving and not being overworked so that they're not tired and making decisions and all these sort of things.
Yeah, I think having a mixture of both public and private is probably the most, is from a, I suppose, pay conditions point of view, and staffing levels is probably the best way for, you know, like, without taking my own sort of personal things about it shouldn't matter who, you know, who comes in, well, I'll look after them as best as I can. I think, you know, if you are going to sort of provide better pay for nurses, or it's, you know, having a degree of private healthcare income to that health stream is quite good. I think Australia's got quite a good model, and of the 3 countries I've worked in, I felt like, you know, as a you know, as a worker towards the lower end of the healthcare spectrum, you know, because I was in clinical nurse, I felt like there was more money in that healthcare system, and the conditions were probably slightly better.
Is that Australia?
Yeah, versus most other places I've worked.
And that was in private sector or public sector?
No, because you still have that sort of private, you know, people in Australia are more encouraged to have private health insurance as well. So there's, you know, whereas other countries don't always have, it's not obligatory. But I think in Australia you get taxed more if you don't have private healthcare, don't you?
Yeah,
so,
you do.
You know, so they generate more money that way. And, you know, I remember having, this is just, you know, my own personal experiences here, but, you know, having my own private healthcare in Australia, you get sort of like, you might get a discount at a sports shop, as well as getting sort of like money off massages and stuff like that. So you look at things like that and you go, okay, all right, I'll go and get a massage, or, you know, I'll go and buy some new trainers and go running. So by having those sort of components tied in, it's
got some incentives, the right incentives for health and healthcare.
Yeah. So it's not just, you know, fixing you, but it's also, you know, sort of like health promotion as well. And yeah.
Yeah, it's like anything. I guess anything that's kind of free market versus public. If you have private, if you're having private hospitals, there'll be some level of competition, which can drive some good practices. You know, like I don't know what the examples would be because I'm not in the industry, but could also drive some bad incentives as well, because there's competition in there. But then with, you know, if you've just got public sector and there is no competition and drive to get better, then that's a challenge too, because you kind of want, like you were saying before, you guys collect data so you can look at things and try to reduce stay times or whatever you called it.
You know, because every night in bed is in hospital it costs money.
Yeah.
You know, intensive care unit even more so.
Yeah.
You But no, I mean, New Zealand's got a pretty good healthcare system, and the ACC is a fantastic, component of that. Having all that money come in from the from them as well is fantastic.
So we're talking about trauma a lot, but at Starship, do you get kids coming in who are like 15 and 16 and are in because of like bad health, like they're obese or something? Their diet's no good and things like that.
Yep, and they have other sort of comorbidities as well. They don't have good living conditions, and so diabetes is when you talk about lifestyle as well, diabetes is something that's becoming more prevalent as well. Respiratory illnesses, like I said, in winter become sort of really bad. Like if people don't have adequate heating, or if there's large families in small houses, there's sort of like really good ingredients to spread disease, really. So,
and like diabetes for a 15-year-old kid, what does that mean? What does that do to the body, or what's kind of happening to a kid, or why are they coming in? What's actually causing them to come in? Are they struggling to breathe? Are they dying from their kidneys being sick, or like?
I mean, I'm not a diabetic nurse specialist, but invariably they'll come in when they've got, from my experience of working in ED, they've got excessive thirst and they're peeing loads as well, and that's usually the first sort of signs. And that's one of those diseases that was it isn't curable. It stays with you for life. You have to manage your diet. You have to monitor your blood sugar levels. You have to administer insulin. And I think for the teenage age group as well, when there's a lot of awareness about body image as well, sometimes it's a big challenge for them.
Socially, it's like a retarding factor. You're not able to go out and play and enjoy sports and hang out as much, I suppose.
You can't eat what you want to, and your friends are going to fast food joints. You've got to monitor what you have, and then you've got to do your blood sugars, and that's not nice. You give yourself insulin, and if you don't rotate the site, you give you insulin, you get your skin gets a little bit lumpy, and so you sort of you become conscious of those sorts of things. So.
Yeah.
But I said I'm not a diabetic nurse specialist. But.
Yeah, one thing, I mean, like public healthcare is an interesting topic at all levels. But I've always wondered that what I don't think I've ever seen in Australia, really, or in New Zealand, at least that I can remember, maybe I just don't remember it, have been like good public campaigns about just diet. Like just generally, like if it's a publicly funded healthcare system and all that, like the just good public messaging about diet. I would have thought that would be something that we would do in the West, where everyone, Australia, New Zealand, America, the UK, everyone's struggling with obesity in the population. I thought we would have seen more than that. Do you?
I mean, you do see some, like, sort of like you see your adverts about having 5 a day, like fruit and veg and things. I think what makes it hard though is how cheap fast food is.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to go and, go to your local drive-through than it is to go and get fresh fruit and veg.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the other way around.
Yeah, I know. There's some troubles with the model there.
Yeah.
The other day I heard that, and maybe this is globally, maybe it's just America, McDonald's fries. Don't sue me, McDonald's. I saw someone say this. McDonald's fries, they choose a particular type of potato. And the reason they choose that particular type of potato is that it's a long potato. And they want that potato because it means they can create long French fries. And they want long French fries because that little red cup thing, they stand up and they look like a nice floret of appealing fries. Short ones doesn't look like you're getting a good deal. So they grow this particular red russet, I don't know what it's called, potato. But this particular potato, which grows red like this, tends to get this like a brown kind of line growing up through it, which means that if they see that in your crop, they're like, no, we're not buying yours. We're going to go get other ones. So this incentivizes the farmers to remove, I think it might be an aphid that causes it. So they have to put on a particular type of pesticide to kill the aphid to grow these potatoes. This pesticide apparently is so dangerous that when the farmers have sprayed it, they won't go into their fields for 5 days afterwards, after it's been sprayed, to let it settle down. And when they harvest the potatoes, they have to put them into these big, effectively hermetically sealed sheds to rest for a period of time to gas out all of the toxins. So you've got this really quite toxic, terrible farming process because the major fast food supplier on the planet wants pretty looking chips. It's interesting, isn't it? The way like an incentive drives this, why do you guys have those big funny sheds with fans on your property? Because these chips need to look this tall.
Yeah.
What? Weird.
I know.
Consequences.
Yeah.
Are you drumming and gigging much at the moment?
Not so much in the winter. Played the other night, but yeah, normally I'm busy doing that in the summer.
Is that a rooftop bar thing? Like rooftop bars are open more in the summer?
It was actually on Thursday a rooftop bar, but they shut the external access because that was the last day of our glorious weather we had before the sun came out. It was all right.
Yeah. Are you working with anyone in particular, or just looking for gigs wherever?
No, I primarily work with DJs. I would like to get back into doing band work at some point in time.
Yeah.
But we'll sort of see how it goes.
Yeah.
It sort of all changes around. There might be a couple of months time might actually find a band and not be doing anything with DJs. So yeah.
DJs would be fun though, wouldn't it?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
In some ways it's easier because you're already playing along to a pre-recorded track and you're just adding your extra interpretation on that. But then you don't know what tracks the DJ is going to play. They might go completely left field and play music that doesn't really fit with the instruments I have.
Do they play stuff that's already got the instruments you've got? And you're like, what the fuck am I doing for this track?
Yeah, totally. But then you just move on to something else. Like if there's congas in a
That's
track.
when you pull the nose flute out.
No.
Deal with that, DJ.
No, but I might pull out shakers or something like that. Or sometimes, if it's got congas in, I might stick bongos in there, and just make it more of a percussive track. But obviously not change the rhythm. But then sometimes if there's a quite simple groove in there that I can mirror, sometimes it's nice to actually play that and pull it out of a track as well, and make it sort of more prominent. Yeah. So, it varies.
Yeah. And playing with a band, what's the good thing about that? Why?
Well, you're sort of creating all of the music yourself as a group. Again, back to teamwork. A lot more light and shade working with bands as well. DJs, it's pretty much the type of music I play. It's funky house music. It's all same time signature, same tempo.
Going pretty hard to keep up with the sound system.
And that's not a huge problem, but sometimes it's nice to just do sort of like more acoustic numbers, softer numbers, as well as the hard driving dancey numbers.
Well, yeah, and be able to have the control to say, well, actually, this track is going to start with me doing this, and that's all there is. There isn't some other.
Yeah, I also find like with because a lot of the DJs don't play like traditional songs, that haven't do the sort of like intro, verse, chorus with a bridge and then another verse, chorus or whatever. Whereas doing that in bands and I feel like you've got more scope to move around different instruments. So I might be playing shakers in the verse and then congas in the chorus, pull something else out for the bridge, whereas with the house tracks it's usually like, for this song I'm going to play this instrument, for this song or this track I'll play this instrument, so yeah, it varies. There's sort of different skills involved with different types of of playing music, I suppose.
Do you ever drum with a traditional kit?
I have done, but I haven't done it for a long time, so my muscle memory is probably a little bit absent with regards to that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I've got a traditional kit at home, like standard.
Have you?
Yeah.
I'm just going to grab a drink. Hang on, keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's more for the kids to play on, really.
Very good. What else has been going on? Oh, that doesn't sound right. There we go.
Well, normal life stuff.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah. I mean, don't do bathroom renovations, but you don't really need to hear about that, do you? No, yeah, life's good.
You've been down to the recycling centre, you were telling me, to get some bathroom equipment.
Well, it's always good to recycle and repurpose stuff, and that place is just amazing because it's a bit in some ways like IKEA.
Helensville Recycling Centre.
Yeah, like you go in there with this like mindset that you're going to get. I used to go to IKEA to go, right, okay, we're going to get placemats, right? And I come out with a new sofa and a rug and something for stirring pasta, which I haven't got, but realised that I actually really need.
Didn't know this tool existed, but now I've got one.
And a picture frame. Yeah. The recycling centre is a bit like that as well, because you go down and go, right, okay, I need to go and get like a light, and then you come out with like a drum kit and a hockey stick and a bike that's got a warped wheel, but you can use it for something.
Yeah, I go in there with this joke with Trina, who runs the place, that she'll give me a basket. I'm allowed to walk around and fill it up, and then she'll take the basket off me before I go. Because I spend so much time in that place.
How does that work for oversized items like doors and table and furniture?
Oh man, before they were in the place they're in now, they were just to the left of it. They were over there. The original recycling centre was over there. And that was before Trina took it over. She was just starting to work there, I think, then. And we just turned up here, and I was going there like every weekend. Honestly, in the first like 6 months that we were in town, when we moved to town, the only people I knew were the people who worked at the recycling centre, because the only people I regularly saw.
Yeah.
And then after a while, Trina came to me one day. She manages the place now. And she said, would you like to be on the board of the Helensville Community Recycling Centre?
They got a board?
They've got a board.
Is it a recyclable board?
Yeah, particle board. Yeah, they asked me because I was there often. I was like, yeah, sure. So I did it for a year or so, and then I got too busy with work and other things. So I couldn't continue doing it. But it's good. And I went down there just recently. They've started their shed, like where they are now.
I was going to say, behind where all the sort of like glass and wooden things are, they're building something, aren't they?
They're building a massive shed. It will be huge, and they've got really good plans for what they're going to do down there. So the current building and shed is going to become kind of storage and some sort of equipment, and then they're going to put teaching facilities, like area down there where they can try and help some of the local community, like the Craigwell House, I think, for people intellectually handicapped, that sort of thing. I think that's where they are. Try and take some of the materials that they've got coming in there, get some of those people in to try and work with them to produce some items, to make some cash for them, get them feeling like part of the community. Do some teaching around recycling and that sort of thing. Get kids in. I think it'll be really good once it's done. I think I'll put a whole heap of trees and things in.
I think it's good to have some form of education about recycling because, I watch these shows about, things that go into recycling that never get recycled, or, even like if it's not rinsed, it doesn't get recycled. And it's just, like if people knew that, then...
But I don't think the current recycling program is what we think it is.
Yeah.
Like, I think we think, we put our recycling out and it all gets separated out. And like, I don't know, I've heard some stories that, some of the trucks that pick it up just go over to landfill. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I just heard some stories. And like you say, no, if there's just too much paper in that, just throw it out. Yeah. It's like, really? You think they should just go, if they're going to recycle it, they should take it full of anything and just sort it out.
Yeah, I know in the UK they're very specific about what goes in what recycling bins, and they've got quite stringent rules about it, which I think makes sense a little bit because at least then you know exactly what you're doing. Whereas I think with our system, it's just like put everything in, and like you don't even know if are the bottles supposed to have the tops on them or not, and do you rinse them? Is it I personally feel like you should. I don't think having a milk bottle that's got a small amount left in it. When somebody comes to sort that out several weeks down the line and undo the lid, it's going to stink.
You don't want to take the fun out of their week.
Yeah.
So the other thing though is I haven't researched this, so I'd be interested to know. But you can take all that rubbish and you can burn it And because everything's got a heat capacity, and like food, when the water's out of all that, everything that goes into rubbish, plastic, all that stuff will burn. You might end up with some gunk at the bottom, and you could probably get some nasty toxic gases coming off. But if you burn it, trap the gases with some sort of filter, so it's not going into the atmosphere, and put the gunk aside, then you've just turned that into energy. Like if you're heating water and gas and energy. I actually wonder, what the net positive is, if there's a benefit to doing that versus the energy to take, say, the cardboard, separate all the cardboard out, send it back into a process to clean it up, to smash it down to fibers again, to put it back together. What's energy-wise, what's better? Are you actually better to just go and burn it and generate electricity? I don't know, but it's an interesting question. I'd like to know the answer to that.
Fair enough, but also like how many sort of like cubic tons of rubbish would you need to burn to get sort of like 1 kilojoule of energy? This
is a question. Like I don't know, but I imagine that there's a lot of energy going out in the rubbish bins that you're going to burn. Plastics, cardboard. I mean, obviously metals. I guess the metals would just go through a process. They'd melt and drop out the bottom, and you'd probably retrieve a lump of metals. Maybe get it high enough they start to oxidize. I don't know. But organic waste, once that's hot or dry, it will burn as well. There's the guy who invented the remember the Segway?
Yeah.
That machine with 2 wheels with self-balancing. Steve Carnan, or no, Keenan, don't know. He, I believe, also invented a little small-sized power unit, it'll burn anything. And it's exactly that. And I think his plan was for developing nations, like a growing town in Africa or something. You put one of these in the town, and all the waste goes to it, and it just burns it and produces electricity. And so you're using that waste to generate electricity. And I know everyone's like, you're just burning waste, it's horrible. I was like, well, I don't necessarily think it is horrible
surely in some ways it's better than landfill.
That's the kind of thing I'm thinking. Is it better than going to landfill?
It still produces all the gases.
Yeah. But then again, this is another thing too. So my hometown, for years and years and years, there was a tip out of town. Right. And as a kid, I used to love going to the tip with Dad. Just so much fun. I can still remember the smell. It's like balsamic vinegar. Like,
is this where your love for the recycling centres
is
coming?
It is. It is. Go there and come back with more than we took. Yeah. But I'd love it. You just scrounge around all of this stuff, broken bikes and bits and pieces of parts and things, and try not to cut yourself on glass. But over years, that landfill tip, now I think they're taking methane off it. Like they're actually capturing methane out of it. I believe so, anyhow.
Yeah, I suppose if it wasn't a outdoor environment and they could actually regulate the gas emissions, then
I think they just put big plastic. I think they just put big plastic tarps over the area where the landfill was. They just put big plastic tarps over and let.
Can't be airtight though.
No, but they don't have to be airtight. They're just. Let's say this is the area that you used as your landfill. The tarp just goes a bit further around it, and it raises up, and they just capture it. All the methane just collects, and they suck it out and tank it, or I don't think they burn it on site to generate electricity. But yeah, like I just wonder, could you not shrink that concept down to your house? So all of your rubbish and waste goes into a little box next to the sink, and what it actually does is burns it, and that heats up your hot water and produces electricity for your lights and your heating and whatever.
Awesome, wouldn't it?
Well, that'd be cool. A kind of self-sufficient house.
Yeah,
I think that's I don't know if you can do it, but I think that's a really cool idea.
And then we can get your AI systems involved, so they know exactly how hot you want things and where you want. If it's winter, so you need more heat to the
underfloor heating, or
as opposed to your hot water.
Yeah,
you still want hot water, but
you turn the hot water up by 2 degrees in the winter time because it feels nicer or whatever.
And the AI system can then use that energy to power your TV as well.
Yeah, solar powered. It just seems like you say, if the recycling process isn't exactly what we think it is, and a lot of that stuff just ends up in landfill anyhow, there must be a better way to do that. Because it's kind of got to be inefficient to go, oh, we're going to spend 30 years of dumping landfill there, and then when we think it's right, we'll put a tarp on it and we'll try and capture the methane out of it, versus let's just burn it in a controlled environment right here and maximise the energy we get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Should invent that.
I'm sure it's been invented. AI will invent it.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. That was fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Did you have fun?
Of course, mate. I always have fun chatting to you.
Good. Good. I don't know what time it is. What, it's been an hour and a half. What time did we start? 12? Yeah, so it's 1:30, I guess.
We started at 2.
We started at 2, sorry, you're right. Yeah, no, you're right. It started at 2.
We've gone back in time.
We have. We've got younger.
Negative 30 minutes.
Shit, do you know what I saw yesterday?
What?
A picture of a guy who was 5'3",
Right.
had a leg extension operation on his shin bones. He's 5'9".
That must look quite disproportionate.
No. Oddly enough, it's like his upper body, when you kind of look at his smaller picture, you're like, oh yeah, his upper body looks bigger than his legs.
Anyway.
Yeah, his short legs. And he went from 5'3" to 5'9". And they showed rough how the process works. Does not look pretty. Basically, they cut the top of your knee open.
Yeah.
They bore down through your knee into the main shin bone. And I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening. I was just watching it. I got the impression they dropped down like 3 metal cylinders, go down into the bone marrow, I guess where the tube is, and they maybe use a magnet on the front of the leg to pull it down, and that pulls the bone down, and then I guess you just let it take 6 weeks in traction maybe, and it knits, and then they've added this much.
How old is this person?
He looked like he was 40, 50-year-old.
Bones don't really grow that much right then.
Well, maybe they're using stem cells and steroids.
Do you know the phrase orthopedics, which obviously relates to the medicine of bones? You know where it comes from?
No.
It's straightening children is what it means.
Straightening children?
Yeah.
Really? Well, from having rickets?
Probably historically, but yeah, if you think pedic is, pediatrician, so ortho,
I remember watching a video of a orthopedic surgeon. Honestly, he looked like a demon. His big round face. He had these like goggles on with almost like swimming goggles, and he was just hacking through someone's leg. Like it was a real operation. He was a real surgeon, but they were talking to him in his normal business suit, blah, blah. But then they showed some of him working. And when you see an orthopedic surgeon working, it's not pretty work. No. It's sweaty, grinding through bones.
It's a very practical, like medical subspecialty, surgical subspecialty.
Yeah. Yeah, shit. Like imagine doing an amputation. Oh, I guess you've probably seen amputations, but not fun.
No. It's funny you say that. How do you do your job, being a nurse? But I'm not sure I could do things like that. I couldn't, amputate someone's leg.
Could I amputate someone's leg? Yeah, I could. I reckon I could amputate your leg.
Could you?
If I needed to. Yeah. Like, say your foot's stuck in a drain, the water's rising, you're going to drown unless we cut your foot off.
Yeah.
I go, buddy, I love you. You can thank me later. Give me the hacksaw.
Just make sure we cut the right leg off.
Which leg? Oh, shit. But yeah, I think I could do that. Never had to do it. But imagine I would in that situation.
That's an extreme situation, but just.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying that I would like to amputate your leg. If you've got nothing on later on, I could just take one of your feet off. That's not where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I like both my trainers being, just be going to shop and buying one trainer every time I need to get some.
Yeah. I saw some video of, it was in Vietnam, of like a kind of grizzled, I don't know what he was, sergeant, someone. He was older. He was probably 40, so he was older. And I don't know, he'd taken a grenade or a mine or something to the ankle, and he's on the hospital bed, and I don't know how much sedation he'd been given because he sounded fairly with it, but I think they were talking about they're getting to the point of thinking about having to amputate his foot, but I could hear him talking them out of it. He's like, no, I can feel that. Oh, that's pain. That's good ankle pain. I can feel that pain. Like, you're not taking my fucking foot off. You know? Shit like that, man. Tough.
Yeah.
Have you seen some of the video of the... this blows my mind. Like, I love the fact that Twitter is free speech. Like, I really do. I love that you can kind of say anything on there. But still, just the everyday... Well, obviously, I follow these channels because I'm interested in the war. But the everyday access to just, like, graphic footage of people being killed. Like, the dudes who are asleep in a foxhole and a little drone flies over and just drops a grenade onto them. Like, that's fucking callous.
Yeah.
You know, that's horrible. I don't care if they're Russian, Ukrainian or Lithuanian. That's just
human beings,
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's videoed as well is even, you know,
And
more morbid.
the people who post some of them are just not in a good way. You know, like their little comments are like, bye baby Russians. It's like, dude, there's something wrong with you if you're deriving pleasure out of this.
Don't even, like, I don't know. The people that are commenting on, you know, they probably don't even really tie into the fact that it's real. You know, it's just like something they're seeing on their TV. It's like, but that's a person that's got friends, family,
parents.
They like certain things, they don't like other things. You know, they on the weekends they do such and such. You know, they don't factor that sort of thing into it. It's just a thing they're watching a movie, but they're not. It's real.
Yeah, some of them I think they're just, that's right. They're not factoring it. Well, you hope they're not factoring it. And if they actually thought about it, they would go, hang on, this is not cool. But some of them I think are just like, they're just worn out, hollow people. They just don't care. They're like, the footage of Prigozhin, who's the Russian commander of the Wagner assault forces that were fighting in Bakhmut. So he had a bad day a fortnight ago or a week ago where a whole bunch of his guys were killed in a day. And so he came out with this big public video where he was complaining and saying, like he was talking about his superiors and going, you're fucking corrupt. We haven't been given enough shells and all that. And like, it's in Russian. I can't understand a word of Russian. But what was interesting was even though it was in Russian, obviously it had come from a Russian news source because they were still beeping out words. Like occasionally it was going beep, beep. I didn't know who's swearing. But he's a Prigozhin man. He's a good front man for a military organisation. His eyes just are calm. But his mouth is like he's fucking furious. But it's at night time, and laying in the background behind him is about 70 of his dead soldiers on the ground. You can't see them real clearly because it's nighttime, but that's the background, the backdrop. Like it's something I will never forget from this war.
Surreal.
That video, that's kind of like a telling thing. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. Well, should we wind this up?
Sure. Cool.
Go for a beer. I've got a beer here if you want a beer.
I'll have a beer. Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Nice. Huh?
Cool.
There we go.
There's me thinking I was going to get like a countdown for when you actually start.